Oh, I mean, to your question, my routine now is more balanced.
Yeah.
The reason I run and the reason that I did so much running was because my grandfather was the first Australian to run a marathon after having open heart surgery.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this is back in 1984. And I remember going to the event that he ran and everyone thought he would die. I mean, all the doctors were saying there's no way that anyone after having that level of trauma to their chest and to their heart, because he had what they call a double bypass.
Oh, wow.
They said, you're not going to live this. I mean, you just kind of sewed up, right? It's not going to, 4 hours of running is not going to be good. But he ended up doing it literally in just over 4 hours. And I was there, I was a 10-year-old, and I was like, oh my God, what is this?
Just over 4 hours. That's fast too.
4:03. In fact, there's a picture on my wall up there with his certificate that he got. And that inspired me massively. And as I said to you beforehand, he was probably one of the more stable influences in my childhood. And so when he passed away, and I'd already run one marathon before that, to sort of connect with him and to connect with some of those really interesting lessons I learned growing up, I got right into running for a good sort of 15 years. So I still do that today. I still run competitively for my age group and whatever else. I do yoga every morning, some form of yoga, nothing too crazy, but just to kind of get some strength, some stretching and some fluency.
Flexibility, yeah.
Yeah, and it's still not great. I have to be honest. Even when I go for a run, my hamstrings need a lot of work. I've got this
because of your running, you really need the yoga. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've got a Theragun, which I kind of, if you've ever heard of those things, I use that. So I do that. But I'm also a little bit more holistic these days. So I meditate every single day. I have different ways of doing that. But I find that also just relaxes my body. And if I feel that I'm more in flow and more present, I tend to be better athletically overall.
Isn't it so much in the mind, right?
It is. Yeah. So I'm running, on average, I'm running probably about 5 times a week, yoga every morning. And then I do 3 sessions of strength work, which is usually a combination of body weight. I don't do any heavy lifting anymore. I do a lot of body weight stuff, chin-ups, push-ups, and some more clever, interesting things. And then I've got a Peloton bike as well, which I use, which I love.
So I find that the habits of highly successful people generally involves a combination of what you're talking about: exercise, meditation, thoughtfulness, mindfulness. How about the food? I'm kind of curious, of course I'm curious about your eating habits, because I mean, that's kind of the world that I live in. And generally speaking, I find that when people get to a certain level of success in their lives, this is an important part of the formula. So I'm curious, what are your habits, and do you follow a certain diet?
Sure. Yeah. I just eat McDonald's. Every day.
Just McDonald's straight up every day.
Every day. That's it. Breakfast, lunch. No. You know what? I find the whole nutrition thing fascinating. It's like a thing that I'm just curious about in general. So I play around a lot, and what I find funny about the whole nutrition game is that everyone's got their kind of things, and what works for one person is not necessarily works for someone else.
100%.
Yeah, and I find that quite, because people get in their tribes, don't they? And they kind of say, this is vegans, this or that's that. So I've tried everything. Yeah. Now, what works for me really well is a combination of sort of a paleo type of keto type of mix. So I don't have any real dairy. Which I know is kind of, it just doesn't work very well for me. Cutting out dairy and having sort of things like almond or coconut milk and things in coffee, because I still have coffee in the morning, that works well for me. It's massively changed how inflammation happens in my body, particularly around running. And I know it's a big change. And then I have mainly protein in terms of meats, not too much red meat, mainly chicken, fish, and a lot of salad. And I'm not really good on heavy carbs. I can have rice, but if I have lots of bread, I just slow right down, and I feel like I need to sleep.
Yeah.
So that tends to be, and then I drink 3 liters of water every day. Still drink alcohol, but tends to be mainly red wine when I feel like it, because I quite like relaxing with that. But everything else is pretty tight, and it kind of fits that formula, and it's very, very habitual and very routine-led.
Have you ever wondered, is rinsing my produce with the water that comes out of the sink that I don't even drink enough to really clean it? Well, then you're one of the smartest people I know, because you're absolutely right. It's not enough. That's why we created the only all-natural and patented line of food wash and wipes. And it's called Eat Cleaner. It's tasteless, odorless, and lab tested. And it removes up to 99.9% of the residue that water can't, including pesticides, wax, soil, and junk that can carry bacteria that can really make you sick. Plus, we formulated it to help extend the shelf life of your fresh produce too, and that'll save you money. When your berries are lasting up to 10, 12 days, you know that's a good thing. It helps your produce last up to 5 times longer using a natural blend of fruit acids and antioxidants. So there's no chemicals. It's just clean eating fun. And this can help save your family an average of over $500 per year. Make it easy on yourself, reduce waste, and get that fruit and veggies into your body, where it's going to do you a lot of good and not in the trash. Check us out, eatcleaner.com, or head to our Amazon store at amazon.com/eatcleaner. Do you eat in a way where because with running, it's interesting because you need that energy, but it's hard to sit down and have a big meal. Do you find yourself like staging your meals into smaller meals, or are you, I sit down and eat 3 meals a day kind of guy?
I eat when I feel like I should eat. So I don't have it too. When I say it's habitual and it's routine, it's not that it's like I have breakfast at this time, lunch at that time. I try and do a bit of intermittent fasting as well. I don't do that every day, but I might do 2 to 3 days a week. I will do that. So that then changes the timing. And sometimes I'm working late. Sometimes I usually try and get up pretty early, but my days are not, again, always the same. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's kind of being present and being very intuitive about my energy. And if you ask me what's the most important thing, is it losing weight, having a 6-pack, whatever, it's having the energy to get through everything that I want to get through and achieve. Yeah. So that's my one measurement, my one thing that dictates everything.
Yeah, it's interesting. My book that I wrote last year that came out, it's called Eat Like You Give a Fork. But it's the it's the real dish on eating to thrive. And I think that is the key. The key is finding what works for you. And I talk about the benefits of intermittent fasting and how it can be so helpful. And also, I just recently found out about a company called My Gene Food, and they are doing an analysis of your saliva to indicate what the best eating protocols should be, and they identify different enzymes that you may be deficient in, or it's fascinating. I got this 20-page report, and what was so interesting to me is that my ideal diet was all about where I'm from. I'm from the Mediterranean, classic Mediterranean diet, and it's very similar to what you just described. Do you know where your family initially came from? Just curious.
The problem being Australian is you're a bit of a mongrel. Like you're a bit like a dog that no one knows kind of where it's come from, right? Because, it's sort of a convict place and all that. I do know that on my mother's side that my grandparents and their sort of descendants came from the south of England. And then my dad was born in Scotland. So I'm actually half Scottish. But then my skin tone, and particularly if I go out in the sun, I tan really well. I can see that, yeah. Yeah, and so some people say there's definitely some Mediterranean in there as well. So that's where I think there's a connection. Yeah. But the one thing I will share with you is I've had 3 surgeries on my right knee, 3 arthroscopies. One was from a skydiving accident. The rest is probably from just too much running. But then I had stem cells put in there about 3 years ago, and it's been life-changing. And what I find is everything's really about inflammation. So I can feel if my body feels inflamed. So I try and keep it alkaline as much as I can and very conscious of anything that's increasing that ability for me to be inflamed. Because that's when I start to feel arthritic in my knees or my back hurts. And if I can eliminate that and keep the hydration up, that's when I feel the most energy and also I can do the things I want to do. So I see a theme here. I see that you are a very intuitive person. I think that you figure things out because you listen and then you take the information and you then put it into practice.
What do you think is something that a listener could do to action, just taking that first initial step? Because I think that is a gift, and I don't think that comes easily to everybody. I think sometimes it's very overwhelming to find information. I mean, certainly we are advocates of what we know works, but sometimes you have to go out there and experience it yourself. What is step one for someone listening that wants to find a path of health and vibrancy that would work for them?
I mean, it's a really big question, because I could break it down.
It's just one step, though.
No, I know, but it's like, I'm a big believer in experimentation. I really am, and you called it really well. I'm very intuitive. I'm intuitive with people. I'm intuitive with myself. I can feel things. I'm very kind of kinesthetic. That's just kind of, again, a gift that I have. So what I tend to sort of say to people when in different ways is, you've got to trust that feeling. We all have a degree of that, right? We all have a degree of intuition, and sometimes we close it off. And so what I often say to people is, you've got to trust what you're feeling. So back to your point around, am I vegan? Am I this? Or what should I do? My first thing is, firstly, trust yourself to go somewhere that it feels right as the first starting point, and then experiment and see how you feel. And then what I did, and this is the kind of thing, I went and tried quite a few different things before I came back to what I do now. But the first thing that I tried is the thing I came back to, which is interesting.
What was that?
This more kind of like, as I said, my diet, my nutrition, this idea of on that side of things. So I went and tried, the whole vegan thing for a while. I experimented to see what was going on, but I came back to something which felt like it was right for me. But the second answer to your question, the reason I don't need, I suppose, the motivation now is because I have leverage. And the leverage comes from what happened in the past. Now, I appreciate lots of people don't have that experience, and that's potentially good. I see it as a great thing that happened to me, but I can see why people would also see it as challenging. You've got to find leverage. You've got to find a reason why. And if that doesn't come, I'll be really direct about it. I don't think it is possible for people to sustain something.
So when you say it's finding your why, and I wrote a lot about that in my book too. The first section is really about what do you want in life, and what are you doing it for? I think we often get on a bandwagon, and sometimes we turn around and we go, well, why did I do this? And being a little bit more understanding of what you need, because we are all so unique. I think that for guys, it can be hard to be vulnerable. I think it can be hard to not feel like you have it all together. What would a piece of advice be that you would give to the guys listening out there who just want to be strong, either for their families or themselves, but just feel like it's tough? They've had maybe more knockdowns than they have.
I think this is going to hopefully resonate with a few of your listeners. I think vulnerability is the ultimate strength. And if you want to get if you want that sort of to be sort of smashed into your face, go and read David Goggins' book, which is called Can't Hurt Me. And he comes from really, I'm not sure if you've read it, Mareya, but he's a Navy SEAL who does all sorts of crazy stuff, but his background, his backstory, his life is just so challenged.
I'm writing it down because I want to go download it.
It's my book of the year last year. Now, partly because he does incredible things with his body and has changed and transformed himself to a way that's just remarkable because it's just so big. But what I love about what he talks about is he's like, get over yourself. Trying to be the macho guy is that's not what works. And if you want to be really strong, I always think strength in anything, but particularly when you've got the masculinity side, is what happens when things are really bad. What happens when, God forbid your wife gets cancer or you lose a child. That's where strength really comes in. And my advice is that, you've got to connect with that vulnerability, because if you can, and you feel more comfortable about who you are, then a lot of the stuff that you're holding drops away. And that's when you can start to achieve big things, achieve big goals, do things that are kind of extraordinary.
I love that. I really love that. And you can't see it right now, but my workout top says strength. And it's just a reminder to me that strength comes from the inside. So we're kind of coming to the end of our time, and I always ask this question. So I'm going to ask it to you. So if you had one meal that you could eat over and over again because it's your favorite meal, prepared by somebody in particular, what would the meal be and who would make it?
That's a great, my favorite food is Thai food. I just love the freshness of it and the cleanliness of it. Whether I could eat it every day,